Hi, I'm Courtney Halsted and welcome to Series 4 of Real, a program that sheds light on Melbourne from a perspective of young Melburnians. This season we are focusing on the theme of adversity and diversity, what these words mean and the ways in which they can challenge and unite us. Adversity is faced by people every day, be it small or large. Any misfortune or hardship can be a struggle to overcome. On the other hand, diversity is what makes us human. We're all different and respond differently to adverse situations. Throughout this series, we will look further into these terms and how they can go hand in hand with each other. Did you know that once every 30 seconds, somewhere in the world, the Earth shakes slightly? These earth tremors are strong enough to be felt but cause no damage. However, every few months, a major earthquake does occur, which brings severe impact and damage with it. In tonight's episode, we'll be looking at the fury of Mother Nature and the adverse effects of several forms of natural disasters. We'll explore the ways in which they affect us psychologically and physically, as well as how we move forward from these devastating effects. In February 2011, many parts of Australia were affected by severe flooding. One community that was deeply affected was Carisbrook, a small town just a few hours out of Melbourne. Christina Brasacchio and myself caught up with Lynn Simmons, a Carisbrook resident, to find out how their community came together and healed through such traumatic events.
In this town, 14th of January 2011, there was this spectacular flood. It wasn't an event we could control, and if it happened again, we still wouldn't be able to control it. The event happened, and people just appeared from everywhere and helped. The water went within about 8 hours, but the recovery is far, far slower. So there was a lot of work on normalising the fact that this is a tough thing to go through. The Lions Club here were phenomenal. What they did is they held over 50 meals where they catered for up to 300 people, and that was a really good way of gathering people together. So you'd be here cleaning your home, and then you could go and just see other people who were in the same situation. Really met lots of our neighbours. Even in a small town, there's people that move in and out, and you may not have quite known the people 2 streets down. Well, we all know each other now.
Natural disasters can leave varying impressions on a person. These effects are not only physical, but can have a severe impact on your emotional well-being. Many people seek help due to the hardship a natural disaster can bring. Real team members Hayden Fraser and Payam Dineshpaju visited Gavin Foster from Eastern Health recently to discuss his work with young people in need of psychological support. Let's see how they went.
I've been working as a mental health clinician for about 25 years, but in the last few years I actually was involved with the bushfires that happened across Victoria and providing some counselling to people who are directly affected by the bushfires. For young people it's the same as fairly much everybody really, in terms of the effects of a trauma can generally be resolved, and that may be without any kind of counselling or supportive help within a couple of weeks to maybe a month. For a small percentage of people, that may go even longer and may develop into some problems that might affect a person's emotional and mental well-being. I think it's really important for everybody in these circumstances, to as much as possible and as soon as possible to get back to a normal life. There's some great organisations. They're called Headspace, specifically for young people. They can be a really good resource.
Natural disasters are not only fire, flood or earthquakes, which in terms of the event can all be over fairly quickly. Some natural disasters can last years and their effects can take more and more of a toll the longer they go on. Australians, especially farmers, have sometimes had to battle drought for years at a time. This affects all sorts of things like animals, produce and in turn financial sustainability. Callum Warren-Smith and Stephanie Elazar recently spoke to Nicholas McGay, media spokesman for Melbourne Water, about their involvement in times of drought.
Droughts are officially declared by the Bureau of Meteorology as the chief source of information on climate in Australia. What it means for us is we don't sort of talk in terms of drought, but in terms of water shortage, and the two go hand in hand. But in terms of the most recent drought, which they term the Millennium Drought, that began in 1997 and went all the way through to 2009. Throughout the drought, the storage levels basically went from being full in 1997 and to right at the very end of it in mid-2009 they dropped to just a little over 25% full. And the biggest change that happened with that, there was an 18-month period between 2005 and 2007 where they went from about 60% full to just under 30% full. The most severe levels of restriction that we'd reached throughout that drought was stage 3A, and that basically ruled out washing the car, watering the lawn on most days, and things like watering the garden. So the single biggest weapon we had against drought was you and I, Melburnians. If Melbourne didn't heed the call to use less water, our data would show that the water levels at that time would have dipped to the 0% mark.
Welcome back. On Saturday, the 7th of February 2009, the worst natural disaster in Australia's history took its largest toll on Victoria. On a day now known as Black Saturday, as many as 400 individual fires burned across the state, destroying over 2,000 houses, injuring over 400 people and taking the lives of 173. The effects of this disaster are still being felt today, almost 5 years on. Today we have a special guest who has researched extensively into that horrific day. Professor Jim McLennan is part of La Trobe University's School of Psychological Science. His past work involved leading a research team that studied the decision-making process of Melbourne metropolitan firefighters, and his work more recently looks into the psychological responses of individuals under threat of wildfire. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for the invitation, Courtney.
Thank you for joining us. I'd really love to get your feedback on the documentary we're about to watch. How would you feel about that?
Okay, that's fine.
Great, awesome. One family from the badly affected town of Marysville is still feeling the pain of the day that changed their lives forever. Directed by Olivia Whyte, this is From the Ashes.
It was just something that was unthinkable, and the unthinkable happened.
It certainly wasn't a normal fire.
It was a crime scene.
The way to explain it would be like it was a hurricane with fire inside it.
Virtually day turned to night.
You'd look at a bush that wasn't on fire and it'd just burst into flames.
I can't say if it was scary because I don't know if I was scared or not.
Don't talk to the man upstairs too often, but I was talking to him that day. Before the fires, it was pretty relaxing place to live, you know, not a worry in the world.
Got married in October 2008, so just a few months before the fires. We got married at the Anglican Church in Marysville. It was a great day. It was a really good day. It was a beautiful day, and I think Marysville just really put it on for everybody that day.
Yeah, you look at our wedding photos and you know, all the trees were in leaf and all the flowers were out and all of that, and it looked like Marysville was, you know, showing its last hurrah before the fire came through. But yeah, it was a great day. I've been involved in the CFA since I was about 18. My role there is just fighting fires. That's about all I do. I always thought, you know, Marysville's not going to burn. We're sort of in a bit of a valley here. A fire did start and you could see the smoke for miles, and well, it's a long way from here and it should have missed the town, but we got a wind change right at the wrong time and brought it across the town. On the night we sort of went around and, you know, recovered what we could. I remember standing there and I felt there was something beside me, and I thought, hang on a second, got my torch back out and started looking at this mass on the ground, and realised that was old Posse. He'd thrown his dog in the back of his ute, you know, got overcome by smoke, and that's where he'd gone down and that's where he stayed. And to find someone like that, where you can't even tell that they're a human being, pretty difficult. You think about it a fair bit. I mean, all it was just a burnt mass of charcoal with 2 little points for legs and 2 little points for arms, and his head was still there, but it just, there was just a couple of holes that you could sort of make out that there were eyes and a mouth, and something like that is something that, you'd never ever think in your wildest imagination that, you're ever going to come across or have to look at. If the fire wasn't a life-changing experience, seeing that is a life-changing experience.
Marysville CFA, they'd be like a second family really. Like, we're all pretty good mates. When you're on a fire truck and you've got 5 people with you, the most important thing are the 5 people with you. A lot of people criticise us, but I don't see any new sets of overalls hanging in here.
Some people wanted to get to the bottom of how the fire started, and they wanted someone to blame.
They thought we just laid down and let it all happen.
The CFA is here to protect communities from fire, and on that day we couldn't.
We'd stood out in the fire until it was too hot to stand out in the fire anymore.
I thought I was fine. There was a lot of people who were dropping by the wayside emotionally, and I thought I was fine. I thought it wouldn't happen to me. And so at 14 months down the track, when I crashed and burned with post-traumatic stress disorder, there was nobody more surprised than me. For the first 6 months that I was back there working, I was just surrounded by a blackened, twisted mess where I almost lost my life. It was like returning to the scene of the crime every day. I didn't realise how psychologically draining it was just going back there every day. In late 2010, I was admitted to the psychiatric ward at the repatriation hospital in Heidelberg, and I had to spend a few weeks in there recovering. I'm on antidepressant medication, I'm on anti-anxiety medication, I'm on sleep medication. I'm certainly much improved on what I was when I came out of hospital almost 2 years ago, but I've still got a long, long way to go yet.
Welcome back to Real. Before the break, we began watching the short documentary From the Ashes. Let's see how it finishes.
Relationships in our family have changed a bit.
My mum and dad have since split. Mine broke down.
My wife was ready to move on and I couldn't, so that was that.
When I first joined the CFA, I don't think I had a very, very close relationship with my dad.
I'm very close to my older son Travis, which is a reversal. Before the fires, Michael and I were very, very close, and Travis and I were always sort of a bit distanced. Now Travis and I are very, very close, and I rarely see Michael.
My dad was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder after the fires.
He's not the same person he was. They don't let him be an active fireman anymore.
Everything sort of changes, some things for the better, some things for the worse.
Our family virtually disintegrated after the fires. I don't know how, but it just did.
We're all different people now, I think. So some of us are a bit harder than what we used to be.
Probably the only thing that reminds me of what it was like before the fires is the fact that before the fires I had a functional, intact family, and now I haven't.
Mum, I can make lace tank. I can make lace tank. And I have to hide.
You know, you sort of find yourself now on a hot day, you sort of look around and you know, you think, is it going to happen again, or is it going to happen somewhere else? And things like that you sort of never really thought of before.
You sort of got to let something else out to let something new in.
Little things like walking down the stairs of the pub and running my hand down the banisters, or the smell of the old pub, or, you know, all the old rooms, and I think you're never going to smell that smell again, or you're never going to walk through those corridors again.
Sometimes I feel like, yeah, it was a different life before the fire, and sometimes I feel like it's the same life, it's just taken a different turn.
We never really considered leaving town because of the fires.
No.
Well, Marysville was where I was born and bred, and that's where I'm going to die.
Now I try to just live in the moment.
I don't try to let the fires affect me at all, because I think if you do, you might as well have died on the day, because you're going to ruin your life worrying about something that you can't change.
This is life now, I'm just trying to live life now, really.
What an incredible story of the Gleeson family from Marysville. Jim, in your research, what were some of the decisions that people made, and why did they make those decisions?
Well, of course, remember the fact that my team were interviewing, that these were not trained firefighters, these were ordinary residents, many of whom had no knowledge at all about what a bushfire is like. But the overwhelming issue that they had to confront, the residents that we interviewed, the survivors, was, am I in danger? What do I have to do to save my life and the life of my family? For many of them, they'd kind of made a pre-decision that if a fire ever came, they were going to defend their valued home. And folk who'd made that decision, the majority of them stayed and did so, some successfully, some unsuccessfully. A small percentage of the folk who decided beforehand they were going to stay and defend, when they saw the intensity of the fire and the speed with which it was approaching, they changed their mind. They decided, this is just too dangerous, we're out of here. And many of them left at the last minute, and they had pretty harrowing accounts to give of the dangers that they faced with their family often in trying to get to a safer place. Other folk who had never really entertained the idea that if a fire ever did come, that they would be staying and defending, for them it was the notion of, is it safe for me to leave? Is it too late?
Yeah.
And a number of folk that we interviewed, they really had no prior idea they were going to stay and defend their home, and they hadn't prepared accordingly. But they decided that they had no option, that their escape was cut off, and their only chance to survive was to do the best they could to defend their home as a way of saving their lives.
So how do you see your research affecting these kind of situations in the future? Okay,
the reason we did the research was to get good quality information for the fire and emergency services agencies to know what it was like for folk facing this kind of situation. And what they paid attention to, what they decided and why, what worked, what didn't work for them as residents confronting a really serious bushfire. And so our focus was very much on trying to distill out of the accounts that folk gave us of their survival.
Yeah.
What sorts of things do agencies need to educate householders about?
Yeah.
What are the really important messages that they want residents in bushfire-prone areas to absorb?
Yeah, communication is very important.
Indeed,
Yeah.
and that was another aspect of what we were trying to find out.
Great.
In terms of warnings and information, what did people pay attention to?
Yeah.
What did they believe that they'd missed out on?
Thank you for that. Finally tonight, another perspective. People are not the only ones who suffer through adversities like natural disasters. Animals also fall victim to these unavoidable circumstances. Stella Reid, who has devoted her life to caring for Australian wildlife, lost her home and animals in the Black Saturday bushfires. Here, Olivia Whyte and Jared Phillips meet with Stella to learn how she and her animals were affected by the fires.
Wildhaven is something that Alan and I started 25 years ago. We look after orphan and injured Australian wildlife. We provide them with a warm, clean home with correct milk formula. We give them bottles. Black Saturday was devastating, totally destroyed. Our home and all our wildlife except for one kangaroo died. We lost the enclosures, the shelters. I could walk from here to Kinglake, which is 7 kilometres, and see nothing. I didn't think I need to rebuild. I thought I need to help the wildlife. I need to help whatever I can. We say welcome to Wildhaven then, don't we? That's us.
What an inspirational woman. It's great to see someone going out of her way to help the native Australian wildlife in times of dire need. Well, that's all from me tonight. Tune in again next week where you'll be joined by a new host who will bring you more stories of adversity and diversity on Real. I'm Courtney Halsted. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to keep it real.